Two security officers stood on either side of Claire Bennett in the Grand Meridian Hotel lobby, while Vanessa Cole held up Claire's invitation in front of dozens of reporters and declared it a fake. Several guests looked at Claire's worn blue dress and called her a desperate woman chasing a billionaire for donations. Vanessa had no idea that she was humiliating the one person with the authority to stop the entire campaign. Claire did not beg, and she did not use any title to protect herself. "Call Alexander Reed," she said, "or check the confirmation code on the invitation." Vanessa looked directly at her, speaking loudly enough for the cameras to hear. "Mr. Reed does not know who you are." Claire froze, not because she doubted the man she had married, but because she realized Vanessa was no longer handling a misunderstanding. She was creating a story before the truth had a chance to speak. Only hours earlier, Claire had been at Hope House in Brooklyn. The heating system in the children's area had failed during a freezing afternoon. With no rooms available, Claire cleared every document from her heated office and gave the room to Maya Torres, another mother, and two newly arrived children. Claire carried blankets herself, prepared warm milk, and knelt to eye level with a frightened little boy. "No one here will make you tell your story before you are ready," she said. "You and your mother are safe tonight." A media team from the Safe Tomorrow campaign arrived and asked to film the blanket distribution for the gala. Claire stood in front of the door. No faces, no audio recordings, and no interviews with children. "We have not authorized the use of their images." After the camera crew left, Maya closed the door and removed a red flash drive from her pocket. "I backed up the email chains, invoices, and document history," she said. Images of two families appeared in promotional videos even though their consent forms allowed internal use only. Every time I asked questions, several emails disappeared from the chain. Claire placed the flash drive inside a blue Hope House file. The center had been promised funding for emergency housing and heating repairs, yet it had not received a single dollar. Claire had submitted 3 requests asking how the money had been allocated and never received a complete answer. Her phone vibrated. Alexander was calling from his car on the way to an emergency meeting. "I am sorry I cannot pick you up," he said. "I will reach the Grand Meridian before the main announcement." Claire looked toward the children curled beneath their blankets. "Alex, did you read the budget file I sent you?" There was a brief silence. "Vanessa said it was only a cost classification issue. Her department is handling it." "I asked whether you read it." Alexander started to answer, then said he also wanted to make something important public that evening. But his assistant interrupted to say that the meeting about an international deal had begun. The call ended before Claire heard his explanation. She stared at the dark screen, feeling more uneasy than before she had asked. At her modest apartment, Claire put on the blue dress whose sleeves she had repaired herself. Behind the door hung an expensive man's coat. Beside the sink were 2 different coffee cups. She opened a drawer, looked at a small wedding photograph of herself and Alexander, then closed it again. The invitation beside it carried a handwritten message. "This time, I will not let you stand outside your own story. Alexander." Claire turned her platinum wedding ring inward. She was attending the gala as the founder and legal representative of Hope House, not as the wife of a chief executive officer. But when she arrived at the Grand Meridian, the name Claire Bennett was missing from the guest list. Noah Ellis checked the previous versions and discovered that her name had appeared on an earlier list with the note, "Honored Guest," then had been deleted that afternoon. "I will call the legal department," Noah said quietly. Vanessa appeared before he could make the call. "We are not delaying the program for someone who has not been verified." Claire showed Vanessa the invitation, carrying Alexander's handwriting. The moment Vanessa recognized it, her jaw tightened. 1 second later, she raised the card. "This could have been copied. I am declaring it invalid." Claire asked to speak privately. "The Hope House agreement has not been signed. If you announce the program tonight, you are using our name, data, and images without consent." That was Vanessa's first opportunity to stop. She could have delayed the announcement and preserved the documents. Instead, she stepped closer to Claire. "This campaign is bigger than one small center in Brooklyn. You will sign when you understand what it can do for you." Claire headed toward the reception area, hoping to find Chief Legal Counsel Daniel Cho. Vanessa immediately signaled security to block her. The argument drew cameras and guests holding glasses of champagne. At that moment, the promotional video appeared on the large screen. The host introduced Alexander as New York's most desirable single chief executive officer. Laughter spread across the ballroom as Vanessa turned toward Claire. Why would a man like Alexander Reed secretly marry a woman no one has ever heard of? Claire suddenly recognized an image of a little girl from a family whose identity Hope House was protecting. She immediately stepped forward, but security blocked her path. "Turn that video off. You do not have permission to show that child." Vanessa did not ask about the consent forms. Her eyes moved to the blue file in Claire's hands. "Search her bag." Claire held the file tightly against her body. "This contains confidential information about women and children. I will not hand it to the communications department. I will allow a female security officer to inspect the outside of the bag, but only with an attorney present." Vanessa turned that caution into something suspicious. A woman standing here alone, imagining a marriage that does not exist, is now carrying confidential documents into a gala? What more do we need to hear? A reporter moved closer with a microphone. "Miss Bennett, are you stalking Mr. Reed?" Claire heard laughter around her, but she did not step back. She turned the ring on her left hand outward and placed that hand over the file. "Alexander Reed is not someone I am chasing. He is my husband." The entire ballroom erupted in laughter. Lydia Grant, a longtime donor, even covered her mouth as she turned toward the person beside her. Vanessa ordered security to remove Claire from the hotel and confiscate the invitation as evidence. Noah moved close to Vanessa and spoke quietly enough that only she could hear. "The version history proves Miss Bennett was listed as an honored guest. The invitation code is valid too." That was Vanessa's second opportunity to correct what she had done. She looked at Noah coldly. "You saw nothing. Keep the image of the single chief executive officer and delete that copy." Noah stepped back. But instead of deleting the data, he quietly preserved the edit history and the time-stamped message. A security officer had just touched Claire's arm when the ballroom doors opened. Alexander Reed entered wearing a dark suit, followed by Daniel Cho. He saw the ring on Claire's hand, her pale face surrounded by strangers, and the blue file lying near Vanessa's feet. "Do not touch her," Alexander said loudly. "Claire Bennett is my wife." The laughter stopped instantly. Vanessa became motionless, while every reporter turned a camera toward Alexander. But Claire did not run to her husband. She bent down, picked up the blue file, held the red flash drive securely inside it, and looked directly at him. "Alexander, do you know what your company has done under the name of Hope House?" Claire's question stopped Alexander in the middle of the ballroom. He stepped between her and the two security officers, but he did not shout or threaten anyone. "Everyone step back," he said. "Daniel, verify everything through the proper process." In front of hundreds of guests, Alexander removed the ring from his hand. The inside carried the same date engraved inside Claire's ring. Daniel Cho examined the copy of the marriage certificate Alexander had brought and confirmed that the marriage had been legally registered in New York 14 months earlier. Vanessa quickly recovered her calm voice. "I was only protecting you from a potential threat. No one in the communications department was told that you were married." Alexander did not deny his own responsibility. "I was the one who asked that only a few people know. But privacy does not give you permission to invent a story, delete records, or publicly humiliate a guest." He turned toward Claire. "I am sorry I let you walk into this alone." Claire gave a slight nod, but did not move closer to him the way the crowd expected. "I acknowledge the apology, but my dignity is not the only issue." She pointed toward the screen, which was still frozen on the face of a little girl. Lydia Grant and several people who had laughed earlier lowered their eyes as Claire asked who had authorized the use of those children's images. Vanessa immediately changed her language. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears there has been a misunderstanding involving Mrs. Reed. Tonight, I am here as the legal representative of Hope House," Claire corrected her. "My husband's name does not give me that authority. The organization's legal records do." Daniel confirmed that Hope House was the primary partner in the Safe Tomorrow program. According to the registration documents, only Claire's signature could authorize the use of the center's name, data, personal stories, and images. Alexander looked at Vanessa. Why was the campaign announced as an active program when the partner never signed the agreement? "My department was told the agreement was only a formality," Vanessa replied. "The content had already been produced, and the donors were waiting." Claire opened the blue file. Hope House had received no funding, signed no data sharing agreement, and submitted 3 budget warnings. On the screen, the little girl from a family whose identity was being protected was still clearly visible. "Turn the video off now," Claire demanded. She did not reveal the child's name or circumstances. "Every second that image remains visible increases the risk to her family." Alexander ordered the broadcast stopped and canceled the announcement. Daniel issued a legal notice asking reporters not to republish images of the children until usage rights had been verified. Vanessa stepped forward. "If we stop the program in the middle of the gala, donors may withdraw. Reed Global will suffer serious damage to its reputation." Claire looked at her. "A corporation's reputation cannot be built using children's privacy." The ballroom doors opened again. Maya Torres hurried inside, carrying an envelope of documents. After failing to reach Claire, she had brought the original consent forms to the hotel. The documents allowed the Reed Foundation to use images with faces blurred in internal reports only. They did not authorize display at a gala or distribution through the media. Maya kept her voice steady, even as cameras turned toward her. "Some families at Hope House are hiding from abusers. This is not a cosmetic mistake in a video, it is a safety issue." Claire removed the red flash drive from the file and handed it to Daniel in front of Alexander, Maya, and a board member. Daniel did not open it on the event computer. He sealed the device, documented the chain of custody, and requested a forensic copy so no one could later claim the data had been altered. A preliminary review in a room behind the stage showed that $3.2 million intended for emergency housing had been divided among 3 companies providing media services, brand consulting, and video production. Hope House had received nothing. Yet promotional materials described the facility as though renovations had already been completed. "Who did you send the money to?" Alexander asked. Claire raised a hand before he could reach a conclusion. "We do not yet know whether money was stolen. We need to examine company ownership, invoices, delivered work, and the flow of funds." Alexander looked at Vanessa and ordered her removed from her position immediately. Claire stopped him again. "Do not fire her because she insulted your wife. If there was misconduct, prove it through an independent process. Justice cannot become the anger of a chief executive officer." At Daniel's recommendation, former federal judge Evelyn Price was invited to preside over a special hearing. Vanessa's access to company data was suspended to prevent changes to the records, but she retained access to the documents needed for her defense, along with legal counsel and time to respond. Noah entered the temporary meeting room and provided the guest list version history, along with internal messages. The data showed that Claire's name had been deleted through Vanessa's account that afternoon, after the system had already confirmed that her invitation code was valid. Vanessa did not deny removing the name. Claire threatened to stop the announcement. "I removed her to prevent a confrontation that could destroy the campaign. The 3 vendors were selected because of their qualifications, not personal relationships." Daniel checked public business records. 2 companies were registered at the same shared office address. The 3rd was managed by someone with the last name Cole. "The name Cole does not prove a family relationship or fraud," Vanessa's attorney responded. "My client has the right to provide records explaining how the vendors were selected." Evelyn agreed. She instructed everyone not to declare Vanessa guilty based only on what had happened at the gala. Meanwhile, all remaining payments were frozen to preserve the funds. Alexander turned toward Daniel. "Why did I never receive Claire's 3 warnings?" The technology department reviewed the email routing rules. Every message containing the words "Hope House Budget" had automatically been redirected into a vendor review folder instead of the main inbox for the office of the chief executive officer. Vanessa immediately responded. "That sorting rule was created with approval from your office. I could not establish a system like that on my own." The atmosphere in the room changed. Alexander ordered the access history for his own account opened. 2 warning summaries appeared with a status showing that they had been read, but the attached budget files had never been opened. He remembered reading the first few lines, then forwarding both messages to Vanessa after she told him they involved only technical accounting issues. Claire might have been deliberately isolated, but Alexander had also chosen convenience instead of verification. "You told me you had read the budget," Claire said. "In reality, you only trusted Vanessa's explanation. Why?" Alexander looked at his wife across the long table, but could not answer immediately. At that moment, ownership data for the 3 vendors began appearing on the screen. Daniel stopped at one payment and enlarged the final approval section. The confirmation code did not belong to Vanessa's account. It had been attached through the office of the chief executive officer. Claire looked at Alexander. The hurt in her eyes was deeper than it had been when the crowd laughed at her. "If your signature is beneath that payment, I need to know. Were you being used? Or did you choose not to look?" "Were you being used? Or did you choose not to look?" Alexander did not defend himself. 5 days later, he sat in the row reserved for people required to answer questions during Reed Global's closed hearing. Only findings that did not reveal the identities of protected individuals would be made public. Evelyn Price announced that Alexander could not preside because his office code appeared in the records. Vanessa had her own attorney, access to the evidence, and the right to question witnesses. Not all of the $3.2 million had disappeared. About $1.18 million had already been paid. The rest had either been committed or frozen after Claire refused to sign. The invoices still showed unusually high fees, duplicated services, and unfinished work. Records confirmed that the three companies were owned by Vanessa's brother, her cousin, and a former partner who still shared an investment account with her when the contracts were signed. Vanessa admitted the relationships. "I chose them because they could complete an urgent campaign. The prices were approved by the finance department." The auditor displayed a chain of emails. Vanessa had ordered the contracts divided into smaller packages, each one staying below the threshold that required competitive bidding and conflict of interest disclosure. The descriptions of the services were nearly identical. Only the invoice dates changed. Noah Ellis provided the guest list history and confirmed that Vanessa wanted to preserve Alexander's image as a single man to attract more attention. When I asked about Claire, she said, "If Claire appears without a publicly recognized title, no one will believe her." Vanessa's attorney argued that the statement had been taken out of context, but the message history showed that Vanessa still ordered Claire's name removed after learning that her invitation was valid. Maya testified behind a privacy screen. One little girl had recognized herself in the promotional video and became afraid that her abusive father might find her and her mother. Without revealing the child's name, Maya presented the limited consent form and the emails requesting removal of the image. Those requests had been marked resolved, yet the video continued being shown to donors. Forensic analysis of the red flash drive confirmed that the emails, invoices, and consent documents had not been altered after they were originally sent. The records matched Claire's and Maya's testimony. Daniel explained that the code from the Office of the Chief Executive Officer did not prove Alexander personally approved every adjustment. Transactions below the review threshold automatically received the office code after a department head confirmed them. But the system had sent Alexander 2 budget warnings and 1 warning about image use. He forwarded 2 warnings to Vanessa and marked the third being handled without investigating it. Alexander stood. "I trusted fundraising totals, polished summaries, and Vanessa's reputation more than I trusted uncomfortable warning signs. I cannot say I was too busy or only a victim of deception. I failed in my responsibility to supervise." Claire remembered their phone call from Hope House. What hurt was not that Alexander had participated in fraud. It was that he had been given a chance to listen and chose a convenient summary over his wife's voice. Claire admitted that she had tried so hard to separate their marriage from Hope House that she had not clearly explained how urgent the situation had become. "But my failure to communicate does not give this company the right to use the data, images, or identities of families who never gave consent," she said. Evelyn gave Vanessa one final opportunity to accept responsibility. Vanessa apologized for the way she treated Claire, but still argued that major campaigns required fast decisions and that Hope House would eventually have benefited. Claire looked directly at her. "A vulnerable person does not become a legitimate prop simply because the person using their image promises to do something good later." Evelyn concluded that Vanessa had failed to disclose conflicts of interest, divided contracts to avoid review, concealed warnings, removed Claire's name to pressure her into signing, used images beyond the limits of consent, and maintained false information about Alexander. Vanessa was removed from her position. Records showing possible fraud, false disclosure, and unauthorized use of protected data were transferred to the appropriate authorities. Alexander would not decide whether criminal charges were filed. The 3 contracts were frozen. Unpaid funds were preserved, while the $1.18 million already paid would be audited for possible recovery through civil procedures. The board formally reprimanded Alexander. He gave up his bonus for that year, stepped away from oversight of the Reed Foundation for 12 months, and accepted an independent ethics committee led by Evelyn. Claire did not take control of the company or use her position as the wife of a chief executive officer to gain authority. She gave conditions for Hope House to continue participating. The housing fund had to be independently managed, publicly audited, and governed by clear image consent rules. Program boards had to include representatives of the people receiving assistance, and complaints could no longer pass through the communications department. The board approved those conditions. Most of the remaining budget was transferred directly into an emergency housing trust supervised by an independent organization. Daniel oversaw legal reforms under the ethics committee. Maya represented families in the new consent process. Noah received protection from retaliation and transferred into data compliance. The truth would no longer depend on whether one employee was brave enough to preserve a flash drive. Lydia Grant publicly apologized and funded repairs to the Hope House heating system without demanding publicity or access to family images. A few days later, Alexander came to Hope House without reporters. He worked beside the staff repairing the common room, just as he had on the day he first met Claire. He took no photographs and did not ask her to forgive him. When the room was empty, he said, "I am sorry I left you standing alone against a system carrying my name." Claire set down the toolbox. "I do not need you to rescue me. I need a husband who listens before everything becomes a crisis." Alexander nodded. "I understand, and I will prove that through the way I work from now on." They agreed to make their marriage public while keeping Hope House finances and management independent. Claire continued using the last name Bennett and accepted no honorary title at Reed Global. 3 months later, the gala was held again on a smaller scale. No image was used without consent. No slogan replaced a financial report. On stage, Alexander introduced Claire first as the founder of Hope House and a partner with decision-making authority over the program. Only afterward did he add, "And I have the honor of calling her my wife." Claire stepped to the microphone. She said the night she was mocked was not the first time a woman without wealth had been forced to prove that she deserved to be heard. The purpose of the new program was to make sure that people seeking protection would not be treated that way again. A few weeks later, the new housing fund completed its first safe apartment. Claire and Maya stood beside a mother and her 2 children as a support worker handed over the key. There were no cameras, backdrops, or sponsor logos. There was only the sound of a lock opening and warmth coming from the room beyond the door. Staff had checked the heating, the locks, and the security of the address. The mother had the right to decide who would know where she lived. Her children ran inside without fearing that their story would be traded for attention. The mother tightened her hand around the key and led her children inside. Claire gently took Alexander's hand as the door closed behind them. This time, no one needed to know that the man beside her was a billionaire, because the most important thing had been opened with a key, not a title.